So we had three nice talks, and I have three questions, one addressed to each one of you. The first question is a kind of a nasty question. It's for you. What's the difference between a business analyst and a data translator? Donc, quelle est la différence entre un business analyst et un data translator? I did not get the difference quite well. To me, it seems like it's the same function. Maybe you can ask him for help if you don't know, but I think you know, you should know.
So, thank you. So, from my experience, the business analyst is specialized in the in one entity of the organization. So we will be able to answer some analytic question on, I don't know, the billing or the dunning in my case. And the data translator is only on data analytics project. And I think in most of the data analytics projects, you can use someone with the profile of business analyst. So it just has to, it's my case, I was business analyst before, and then I came to a data analytics project, and I get to know with machine learning subject or all the data science subject.
And do you think there will be other companies adopting this role of data translator? Donc, est-ce qu'il y aura d'autres entreprises qui vont créer ce job qui s'appelle le data translator? Because with time, you have seen the chief data officer, now we have chief protection officer, and so on. Mm-hmm. So is it a new role that's going to be launched soon, or is it only at your company that you see?
No, so it's what I call data translator, but in the end, it's a profile, and it's more a set of activities that can be performed by people who are keen to use the data. So yes, a profile of a business analyst can transform itself to a data translator.
All right, so there's some overlap between those roles, right?
Yeah.
One doesn't preclude the other. And now for our colleague from Preyon, donc pour Monsieur Liquet, one thing which has always, interested me is how do you validate those systems in a real-life production environment, especially before going live? Because you mentioned about sprints, so I guess that you use agile development. But how do you ensure that these systems are accurate and robust as well? Donc, comment est-ce qu'il s'assure que les systèmes qu'il développe sont à la fois précis, donc accurate, et robustes?
With the smile of the customer.
Sorry,
with the smile of the customer.
With the smile of the customer. That's a good gauge, right? Donc, c'est un bon test. But do you have any procedures in place to do what kind of testing do you do?
Not really. Actually, the model are tested just as Christophe mentioned, between a set of data that leads to the model and another set of data that allow you to validate that the model is right. Then we have to follow the results of the model from time to time in order to be sure that there is no problem with the data, so that there is no deviation of the model. Yes.
So it's the same principle of classical precision recall. Yes. Donc les mêmes techniques que Christophe a mentionné, la précision, donc qui mesure un peu si le système est précis ou pas, et les recall qui mesurent un peu la couverture, le coverage du système, donc combien est-ce qu'il peut prédire correctement. Do you have any data governance plan in place to ensure the quality of your data? Donc est-ce qu'ils ont en place un data governance plan ou stratégie qui assure la qualité de leurs données pour ensuite faire des prédictions?
Well, it actually exists at least two levels. First level is just to check that from the place where you have your data until the place where you are storing it, there is no deviation from one side to the other, first thing. And for that case, all the infrastructure that I've shown allows to check that. Then the second point is the initial data right or not? Is it the good value? And there it's more difficult and it's more linked to the process, and you have to define, I would say, new ways of looking at the data in order to see if deviation occur or not.
And
Is it clear?
people need to be trained also to enter correct data or to enter data correctly, I guess. Employees need to be trained how to enter data and how
Well,
to
it's
record data.
most of the time it's automatic collection,
Okay, right, it's automatic then.
but
Yeah.
still there can be some bad values.
Exactly. Donc il y a deux niveaux de data governance pour assurer la qualité de leurs données. And now, lastly, some more technical questions. I guess that to do all these image analysis, it was a very nice introduction, and you showed there's tensors and so on with matrices with three dimensions. I guess that you use a CNN to do these image recognitions, a convolutional neural networks, which work well for image type of data. But these networks, you can fool them very easily. It has been shown that if you change the underlying distribution of your data, these networks can easily mistake a mini car, you know, the Mini Cooper, the front, for the face of a person because it has two big circles, two big lights, and of course a mouth. So these networks are very prone to making such errors. Did you use a neural network to make such predictions? And secondly, how accurate were your model?
So actually neural network, they are especially used for pictures from camera, not much for pictures from satellite. It's just starting few years ago, I would say maybe 3 years ago, because it's directly linked to the resolution of the satellite. And here when I say resolution, it's the size of the pixel. For example, those satellites that are providing open source images, they have respectively a resolution of 10 meter and 30 meter, meaning that at 10 meter, we have maybe like 10 pixels or 9 pixels covering this room. So you will not be able really to train a CNN or neural network on such satellite images because the resolution is too coarse. Yeah. So actually when you work for, I would say, satellites for agriculture, usually you are not really using the neural networks because you are not really trying to spot objects, even if you could try, for example, to spot the fields. But so far, the satellite images with a resolution of 30 centimeter, it's more or less, I just compute the price yesterday actually, so it's a good question for me, but to cover Uganda in one snapshot, it's over 8 million euro to buy images that will cover Uganda a given day, so just a single snapshot. You can even not do what I was showing, the following of the greenness, for example, for all the crop season. So far, there are not enough money in agriculture to work with the CNN. What some people are doing with satellite images, and which we will start, I think, end of this year, it's to work for our pillar of smart city and try to spot the cars in the city and try to be able, even in countries where there are no sensors everywhere that will monitor the number of cars at a given moment of the day, but being able to spot and to say, okay, in that street on a given Monday, you have, I don't know, 100 cars at that time, and last year you had only 20, so maybe there is something to do there. So that's something that we will do, and in that case, with just a single snapshot, it's already enough to come up with good insights. But for agriculture, we are not using neural network. So far, it's too expensive. Yeah, sorry for that.
Donc ma question était, est-ce qu'ils utilisent les CNN, qui sont les Convolutional Neural Networks, pour analyser toutes les images qu'ils captent du satellite de l'ESA et de l'autre. Mais je viens d'apprendre que les CNN ne sont pas adaptés aux images satellitaires parce que ces images-là sont très brutes, ou ne sont pas assez raffinées, ou ne sont pas assez précis pour entraîner l'algorithme de CNN. Ça marche bien sur les images de caméra, mais pas pour les images qui proviennent des données satellitaires.
There are people doing it for research purpose, but not yet really for a daily project, I would say.
Next technical question. Then I will ask one more general question to all of you. So you use a lot of supervised learning, which means you need to have data with labels first and then train the algorithms. How do you collect these data with the labels? Do you manually label your data? Do you have a team to do that for you?
So that's actually what I was showing on what we call the field campaign or the ground truth data collection. For example, for that project that I was presenting today in Uganda. So we went there, as I was saying, with like 20 people for 2 weeks, and everybody has a GPS with an application, and you just go on the ground. If you spot a maize field, I tell you, okay, today you have to spot 10 maize fields, because we know that it's something needed to train and validate the process and the algorithm. So the people, they just go on the ground with the GPS, they delineate the field, so they just take few GPS coordinates at every corner of the fields. They notice, for example, the type of the crop, and then they start to bargain with the farmer, asking to take some samples. So everything is not labeled by myself, but I was managing it. But yeah, it was people just enumerator, like we say, enumerators really doing it on the ground.
Annotators.
Excuse me?
Annotators, you mean?
Yeah, annotators in Uganda, they say enumerators. But
Oh, yeah, okay.
anyway, it's the same.
Donc ma question était, pour collecter les données, pour entraîner les machines, il faut des données qui sont annotées avec ce qu'on veut prédire. Par exemple, si je veux faire une prédiction, si un client est un bon client d'une banque ou pas, je dois avoir des données qui, au préalable, définissent qu'est-ce qui est un bon client ou un mauvais client. Et donc ma question était, comment est-ce qu'il collecte les données qui sont annotées avec l'info que je veux prédire? Et donc il a une équipe qui est sur place avec des GPS pour faire la collecte de manière un peu automatique. Et une autre question plus générale et plus sociale, it's a more general and social question. There has been lots of buzz recently about AI trying to replace human beings, that we'll have robots taking over our jobs very soon. We are seeing that already in many fields, especially in high-paying jobs like medicine. Many more doctors are now being helped by algorithms to make their decisions. There are even now plans to use AI in the field of law. What is your opinion on that? Any of you?
Personally, and maybe it's definitely subjective, because I will protect my career and my field. But I think that the AI field or machine learning or every topics of the artificial intelligence, it will create more jobs than it will replace. But I think that for the biggest part of, or the biggest influence of the AI will be more to improve actually our jobs and maybe replace, to say it badly, the shitty jobs that nobody wants to do at the end. And they will just create, I think, much more interesting jobs that a human is well designed, I would say, to keep the AI mindset well designed to do, while so far, for example, there are still people doing just the labeling or just ranging stuff. So I think, yeah, I'm not seeing it as a big problem or a big issue for the coming years, even if I understand the suspicious.
D'après notre collègue, ce n'est pas un problème. Au contraire, l'IA va nous aider à automatiser des tâches qui sont monotones ou mondaines.
Yes, talking about the industry, is it working? Yes. Talking about the industry field, I would say that it would mostly turn to cooperation instead of replacement. And that's what I already noticed in some I would say well-automated industry, and there are some in Belgium very well-equipped.
As you said, it's a buzzword also, so I think it's really hype now to talk about AI. We should keep in mind that even in the 70s, the artificial intelligence, they were talking about it, and it was also hype, and then it failed to meet all the expectations they had. And so now we have also, again, a lot of expectation about AI, and I don't think AI will answer all these expectations, but it will answer like specific problems, specific topics, but not everything that we read in the newspaper.
All right, so I am quite reassured that I won't lose my job very soon. Donc, je suis rassuré que je ne vais pas perdre mon emploi dans les prochains jours. Parce qu'à les entendre, donc l'IA va plutôt être un outil qui va nous aider à mieux faire notre job que nous remplacer carrément. Merci beaucoup. Je passe la parole à Nicolas.
Merci. Alors, je ne sais pas si Philippe est arrivé, mais non. Donc, je passe la parole à Antoine pour nous parler du sommet.
Alors, je ne suis pas Philippe et je n'ai pas non plus de slide. Alors, on vous a parlé aujourd'hui de tout ce qui est data science, on vous a montré du dashboarding, de l'analytics assez simple. L'étape suivante, elle a été amenée par notre collègue ici, c'est tout ce qui est AI. C'est du deep learning, c'est Google qui prédit votre prochaine question, c'est Netflix qui vous propose votre prochaine série tout en adaptant la couverture de la série à votre profil. Comment est-ce que tout cela fonctionne? C'est pas hyper mystérieux. Si vous voulez comprendre cela, il faut venir au DI Summit. Le thème cette année, c'est de AI Demystified. Donc, c'est expliquer concrètement ce que c'est l'intelligence artificielle. Et le DI Summit, en 2 mots, c'est la communauté data science. Vous le savez, elle a émergé à partir de la communauté open source. Dans cette communauté open source, le partage de connaissances est important. Et qui dit partage dit rencontre. Et pour ça, en Belgique, il faut une rencontre un peu plus grande que les autres pour tous les Belges, celle de DI Summit. On va y retrouver tous les acteurs des data science en Belgique. Il y a plus de 80 speakers, 12 workshops. Il y a un job fair, donc s'il y a des étudiants qui cherchent leur prochain emploi dans les data science, s'il y a des employeurs qui cherchent de leurs futurs data scientists, leurs futurs talents, ils peuvent venir. Il y a exactement tout ce qu'il faut ici. On offre aussi des places pour les équipes qui veulent venir s'instruire et découvrir les nouvelles applications. On a le professeur d'université, Hugues Bersini, qui va venir présenter son dernier livre. Hugues Bersini est une des plus grandes pointures en intelligence artificielle en Belgique. Tout ça, c'est mercredi prochain. Je pense que j'ai utilisé que 2 minutes de votre temps et je suis très content d'avoir fait court. Je suis à votre disposition pour répondre à toutes vos questions parce que tout le monde a faim. Et pour vous faire attendre 30 secondes de plus, je vais vite vous présenter une autre chose importante. C'est pour pouvoir répondre à toutes les questions de data science, pour avoir les compétences, pour avoir des data scientists. Philippe et moi-même organisons une formation pour former des data scientists juniors. Donc également, si vous voulez engager un data scientist sur la période entre octobre et décembre de cette année-ci, ou si vous voulez vous former à l'aide d'un stage et de 2 jours de théorie combinée à de la pratique. Et ces journées ont été créées en partenariat avec des entreprises qui sont spécialisées dans les data science. Vous pouvez aussi venir me trouver. Merci.
Merci Antoine. Bon, je me rends bien compte que je suis le dernier rempart maintenant entre les bières spéciales et vous tous, ainsi que les sandwichs. Donc je vais faire très court. Je voudrais simplement en profiter d'abord pour remercier nos partenaires du Café Numérique qui nous ont aidés à mettre tout cela en place, à organiser. Merci beaucoup. Merci à nos 3 orateurs pour leurs exposés successifs sur ces thèmes du data science. Et puis vous remerciez vous tous également, vous nous êtes fidèles. On a commencé cette aventure de Data Science Liège il y a seulement en fait quelques mois, puisque vous voyez on a commencé en février de cette année pour réaliser 5 meet-up, 17 intervenants et au total plus de 500 participants. Donc on est super content d'avoir rassemblé autant de monde, d'avoir suscité des échanges, des débats sur ces sujets-là. Et donc comme je le disais d'entrée de jeu, on va recommencer l'aventure dès la saison prochaine, dès l'année académique suivante. Donc on a déjà déterminé la première date, ce sera le 11 octobre. Donc n'hésitez pas déjà à la noter quelque part dans votre agenda. Un tout grand merci aussi à nos sponsors, Marc Santerre de chez Preyon, pour rendre effectivement ces meet-up tout simplement possibles. Voilà, je vous invite tous à vous retrouver dans le hall pour le networking où eh bien, plusieurs choses vous attendent et notamment aussi, je le précise, le dernier numéro du magazine Spirit de HEC dans lequel il y a un article consacré à Data Science. Voilà, je vous remercie.